Namaskaram, sir. I request our director, Srimati Revati Ramachandranji, to please honor and felicitate Shri P.R. Kannan. Yes. A multifaceted personality, Shri P.R. Kannan is a genius IITian. Having worked in many reputed organizations in India and abroad, Shri P.R. Kannan has a very keen interest in Sanatana Dharma. His spiritual journey took bigger turns at the instance of Shri Mahaswamiji of Kanchi. He's the author of over 40 books and editor of spiritual magazines. Shri Kannanji is sought after for delivering discourses on various religious topics. We are very, very proud and happy to have him in our midst today. P.R. Kannan sir will now enlighten us with this classic of Sanskrit narrative poetry, Kalhana's RajaTarangini. Over to you, sir.
Check. Namaskar to everybody. At the outset, I would wish to congratulate Ministry of Culture and Kalakshetra Foundation for organizing this splendid festival, VITASTA Festival, over a 4-day period. I wish to extend my heartfelt thanks for giving me an opportunity to say a few words on the classical RajaTarangini today. My association with RajaTarangini started in August 2021 only, when Shankaracharya of Kanchi Kamakoti Peetham, as you know, Kanchi Kamakoti Peetham has been having a very close relationship with Kashmir. Every year, the Matham has been sending Vaidikas to Srinagar to perform Vishwa Shanti Yajna, and a 10-day festival during the Shankara Jayanti celebrations. They have lectures, they have bhajans, they have cultural programs, etc., havans, pujas, etc., etc. So, in view of this close association, our Shankaracharya thought of instituting a series of weekly lectures which started in August 2021 and still ongoing. More than 75 lectures have already happened. The first few lectures were delivered by me on RajaTarangini as instructed by the Acharya Swamiji. RajaTarangini, Neelamata Puranam, and Bhringisha Samhita, and Amaranatha Mahatmyam. These were the 4 subjects which I covered during that time. Now, RajaTarangini, as you might have known, is River of Kings, RajaTarangini. It's a history of the kings of Kashmir, starting from Mahabharata times right up to 12th century. This Kalhana was a poet of the 12th century. His father was a minister. His name was Champaka in the ministry of, in the kingdom of Harsha. In the assembly of King Harsha, he was a minister. So he had access to a lot of palace documents, judicial records, and he personally took a lot of interest in visiting various monuments, etc., etc. That is how he wrote this RajaTarangini as a history of the kings of Kashmir. He has consulted a number of histories, something like 11 authentic histories he has consulted, but he was not at all happy with any of them because the presentation was, according to him, not up to the mark. He says so in his opening shlokas. This RajaTarangini has got something like 7,826 shlokas, divided into 8 tarangas, 8 chapters. And every chapter, every taranga, you will be surprised to know, starts with a prayer to Shiva, mainly Ardhanarishwara Shiva. And Kalhana is celebrated as the first author of a recognized Indian history. That is the greatness he has achieved. This chart here shows that there is more than one RajaTarangini. There are 3 more RajaTaranginis which are shown there, which were followed by other poets after Kalhana. After 12th century, up to the Muslim rule, they have covered the other RajaTarangini, but we will not go into them. That's not very important for us. Our Kalhana's RajaTarangini gives an eye-catching glimpse of kings, palace intrigues, insurrections, conspiracies, plus the cultural history, the temples, the rivers, the springs, the mathas, the chaityas, the viharas, and the king's qualities, whether the king was virtuous or wicked, whether he had able ministers or he had useless ministers, and so on. And he breaks into a lot of shlokas on morals, on life's ethics, life's truisms, unseen causes and consequences. So many things he writes very beautifully, extraordinarily beautiful, epic poem, more than 7,000 verses. Now let's move on to, this is Sharda Peeth, the location which is in POK now, which is shown there. Let's move on to the next one, the Taranga 1. The Taranga 1 starts with a prayer to Shiva. Bhusha bhogi phanaratna rochihi sichaya charave nama pralina muktaya harakalpa mahiruhe. There it says, Shiva shines brilliantly with gems and serpents' hoods in his form, to whom liberated people pray and they merge in him, and who is like Kalpataru. Now, Shiva being described as Kalpataru is nothing unique, but it is unique in the context of Kashmir, because in Kashmir, there is a tradition of worshipping Shiva in the form of a log of wood. There is a story in Neelamata Purana that Shiva manifested himself as Kapateshwara, as a form of Kapata, to test the devotees. So there he appeared in the form of log of wood. So there is a special association with this. That is why Kalpataru has got a special association here. And the next shloka refers to Shiva as Ardhanarishwara. Now, there is a lot of beauty in the way he has constructed the shloka. He says, the left half of Shiva, in his ears he is wearing kundalas, the snakes, and the right half, left half, Parvati is wearing tatankas, and right half he is wearing snakes as kundalas. Similarly, left half, Parvati is wearing excellent blouse, right half he is wearing snakes, and so on. So this Ardhanarishwara form he is nicely presenting here. Then we go to the next one. I am going in a bit of a hurry because I want to cover as much of ground as possible. It's a very vast ground to be covered, and the time available is short. Now he says, the main rasa, though he is talking about, warfare, palace intrigue, insurrections, and so on, though a lot of space has been covered in the book for those activities, though, in spite of all that, he says, the main rasa which I want to convey is Shanti rasa. I want to convey Shanti rasa. Murdha abhisheka shantasya rasasyatra vicharyatam, he says. And then he starts with the history of Kashmir. For 6 manvantaras, now we are in 7th Vaivasvata manvantara now. For 6 manvantaras, Kashmir was under a sheet of water called Sati Saras. That means Parvati herself. Then Kashyapa came there. He prayed to Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. All this is mentioned by Kalhana. He prayed to Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. He made them come down to Kashmir. He made Vishnu break the mountains to drain the water so that the area will become dry. Once it has become dry, once Kashmir Mandala was created, he says so. In the water, there was a hidden Rakshasa called Jalodbhava. He got him killed by Vishnu. Kashyapena tadantastham ghatayatva Jalodbhavam. Nirmame tatsaro bhomo Kashmira iti mandalam. That is how Kashmir was created. Now, after that, you need water for life. So he prayed to Shiva. Shiva struck the ground with his Trishula. And out came from the Patala, Parvati herself in the form of VITASTA river. That is why VITASTA is now being celebrated. The first river which emanated based on Shiva's striking of the ground with his Trishula. Udyad Vaitasta Rishyanda Dandakundata Patrina. This is how he describes Vitasta. That means when Nila was the king, Naga king, first it was occupied by Nagas. The Nila was the king. That is when Nilamata Purana came into being. Now, when Nila was the king, he had a kund, Nila kund. And this Vitasta was the river feeding that kund. So he says this is like a parasol, like an umbrella, for which the staff is Vitasta river. That is the imagination of the poet. Similarly, Gauri herself is Vitasta, he is explaining. Gauri yatra vitastatvam yatap yujjati nochitam. Now this he says in several shlokas in various contexts throughout the book. Then I mentioned about Shiva manifesting as log of wood, which he is also saying here. Bhukti mukti phala praptihi kashtaropam umapatim. Kashtaropam. Papa sodana tirthantaha yatra samsprishatam bhavet. Then he says Saraswati is in the form of Hamsa, Hamsarupa Saraswati. Sandhya Devi is in form of water at the top of the hill. And there is a volcano, fire. And that fire is not ordinary volcano, it is Brahma. Brahma is receiving offerings in the form of Havis. That is Kalhana's description. Look at the Shastras, look at the Vedas, look at the way, religious way he is looking at everything. Nandikshetre haravasa prasade dichararpitaha adyapi atra vejjante puja chandana bindavaha. He says Nandikshetra is a very famous place in Kashmir, which is very often quoted in various books, including RajaTarangini. And he says Nandikshetra was a place frequented by Devas, and they were coming there for puja of Shiva. And the puja chandana bindus, drops, which were left by Devas are still seen by me, by Kalhana, even today, he says. Adyapi, puja chandana bindavaha. Then he says, Alokya Sharadam Devim Yatra Samprapyate Kshanat Tarangini Madhumati Vani Cha Kavisevita. Then he describes Sharada Devi. He says, Sharada Devi is Saraswati Vani Cha Kavisevita. And there is a river called Madhumati, which is called Kishanganga. Why it is called Madhumati is described in another Nelamata Purana. Is the audio working? Then we go to the next slide. He says, Chakrabhut Vijayeshadi, Chakrabhrit Vijayeshadi, Keshaveshana Bhushite, Tilam Shopina Yatrasti, Prasivyas Tirthaihi Bahishkritaha. There is not a place occupied by sesame seed where there is no sacred place. Look at that. Tilam Shopi, Na Yatra Asti, Prithivyaha Tirthaihi Bahishkritaha. There is no place occupied even a sesame seed where there is no tirtha. Vijayate punyabalehi balayaryatuna shastrinam paralokat tato bhitihi yasmin nivasatam param. You cannot win over Kashmir by shastra bala, he says. By the force of weapons. You can win Kashmir only by punya bala. That is RajaTarangini's statement. Paraloka tato bhitihi yasmin nivasatam param. Because people are afraid of paraloka. Paraloka tato bhitihi. So they are following dharma. So those who follow dharma, how can you win them over without yourself following dharma? He is nicely putting that question. Then we have to go into a lot of history of kings. Before that, these are introductory passages. Now he starts with Mahabharata times. Before that, he talks about Kashmir's glory. He says, there is no place like Kashmir on the whole face of the earth. Summer is very cool. Surya is very kind. And in winter, you have hot baths. All this is described. Hot baths you have in winter. You have calm rivers. Rivers are very calm. Vidya Veshmani Tungani Kunkumam Sahimam Payaha. Drakshetu Yatra Samanyam Asti Tridiva Durlabham. Tridiva Durlabham. Even for Devas, it is difficult to get. That kind of Vidya, that kind of education, scholarship is available in Kashmir. That is what Kalhana says. Vidya Veshmani Tungani. High-rise buildings. Kunkumam, saffron, Sahimam Payaha, cold water, Draksha. All this is available in Kashmir. He is praising Kashmir a lot to begin with. Then he starts with Mahabharata times. During Krishna's time, there was a king called Gonanda the First. He was followed by his son Damodara the First. Now both of them died at the hands of Krishna because they were not following dharma. Then what happened was, this Damodara first wife, who was pregnant at that time, was installed by Krishna, by Lord Krishna, as the ruler of Kashmir. A pregnant widow was installed as the ruler of Kashmir, and there was a lot of opposition. There was a lot of opposition. You know what Krishna said? He says that. Kashmira Parvati Tatra Raja Jneyaha Shivamshayaha Navajneyaha Sadushtopi Vidusha Bhuti Michata. The entire area of Kashmir is Parvati, and the Raja there is Amsha of Shiva. So there is nothing wrong with her becoming the ruler. Then she gave birth to a son. That is how Gonanda the First, his dynasty started. Now when the child was born, Jata Karma and other Kriyas were done. He is recording that. Tasya Rajyabhishekate Vidibhihi Sahasambritaha Dvijayendrehi Niravartyante Jata Karmadika Kriyaha. Dvijayendrehi, from the best of Brahmanas. He got Jata Karma, etc. done. Then we have some more kings following, like King Lava, King Kusha. Then we have King Khagendra, next king. Now, about Khagendra, he says, Harahasa Site Krityehi Kritan Lokan Kramadyayav. That means he purchased Shivaloka by his meritorious deeds. Kritan Lokan, he purchased. That means his meritorious deeds were so great that he became eligible to go to Shivaloka with his own body. Now, not only about this king, about many other kings, Kalhana says with his own body he traveled to Shivaloka. People have seen that he is recording that. Then, after Khagendra, we have a king called Suvarna. Now, it is not just temples and mathas, it is also civil works, water works. Kashmir is famous for water works, even in those days. So he says this Suvarna established a canal called Suvarna Mani. First time he is mentioning a water works. Then comes Ashoka. Ashoka was a king who took to Buddhism, as we know. Kalhana elaborates on King Ashoka's Buddhist inclinations. He records that Ashoka built tall viharas touching the sky. And he established the town of Srinagar. Sashannavatya gehanam lakshayil lakshmi samujjalehi gariyatim purim shriyaman chakre Srinagarim nrapaha. 96 lakhs of houses he constructed, which are resplendent with prosperity. Lakshmi samujjalehi, that is what he says. Now, of course, there is an opinion of historians that the Srinagar built by Ashoka is not the one which we recognize as Srinagar today. That is a different view. Now, he also built Ashokeshwara temple. Not that he was averse to Hinduism. He built Ashokeshwara temple. And when Mlechas invaded the kingdom, by Mlechas, I think they mean Yavanas, Greeks. Now, when Mlechas invaded the kingdom, he wanted a son to follow him. And for that, he went to Bhuteshwara. He prayed to Bhuteshwara and got a son. Tapas santoshita lebhe bhuteshat sukriti sutam. And that son was Jalauka. His name was Jalauka. Jalauka was a great king. He expelled the Mlechas. He conquered vast regions. And the place where he expelled those Mlechas is known as Ujjata Dimba. He records that. He had a lot of siddhis. He could be under water for a long time. That kind of siddhi he had. He had a jnani guru, a guru who was a jnani. And in the case of governance of the state, he introduced new reforms. He introduced 7 functionaries of state. Dharmadhyaksho, Dhanadhyakshaha, Koshadhyakshaha, Chamupatihi, Duta Purodha, Daivajnaha, Sapta Prakritayo Bhavan. He established Chief Justice, Superintendent of Revenue, the Treasurer, the Chief of the Army, the Envoy, the Purohita, the Astrologer, 7 functionaries of state. Kalhana says a lot of things about King Jaloka, about his kingdom. He says he established what is known as Yudhishtirim Sthitihi. That means the kingdom of Yudhishthira. Kingdom of Yudhishthira, Mahabharata fame, he re-established. And he was so fascinated with Nandikshetra, he wanted a kshetra similar to Nandikshetra in Srinagar, which he called Jeshtarudra Kshetra. Jeshtarudra Kshetra he established. And he wanted the glory to be same as Nandikshetra. Now, Nandikshetra had a spring called Sodara. Now, he wanted the same spring here. There was no spring here. But he was so pious. You know what he did? He left an empty gold pitcher with a closed cover, mouth closed, in Sodara, that original Nandikshetra spring. After 2.5 days, that empty pitcher appeared in a spring here in Srinagar, where he wanted. Same picture appeared here after 2.5 days. Then finally, you know how he went to Shivaloka. Patnya samam yayau raja sayujyam girijapatehe. Along with his wife, he went to Shivaloka, that is Jalauka. After that, he is followed by Damodara II. Damodara II created friendship with Shiva, like Kubera did. Kubera is known as friend of Shiva, as all of us know. So he established friendship with Kubera. He established friendship with Yakshas. I don't know how that was possible, but all this has happened in Kali Yuga. Haraprasada Patrena Sacharitranu Ragina, Babandha Sukhina Sakhyam, Yena Vaishravana Swayam. Kubera himself became his friend. But Kalhana records with great sorrow, this he is saying frequently, that many good kings, many virtuous kings became evil kings in due course. I think that is the tyranny of power. That is the evil of power that he records. Now, unfortunately for this Damodara II, what happened was he became the subject of a curse by Brahmanas for no reason. He was not at all doing anything wrong, but Brahmanas became unnecessarily angry. And of course, that story is there. I will not go for want of time. That the Brahmanas cursed him to become a serpent. Then we have the king called Abhimanyu, a great king. He had a scholar called Chandracharya who taught Mahabhashyam. This Mahabhashyam comes frequently in RajaTarangini. Sanskrit grammar, Patanjali's Mahabhashyam, because Sanskrit was the language of the scholars, and the grammar was decided by Mahabhashyam. So unless you are an expert in Patanjali's Mahabhashyam, you are not an expert in Sanskrit. That was the view, even today. So he got Chandracharya, who taught Mahabhashyam, who wrote Vyakarana books. But what happened was, during this time, during Ashoka's time onwards, Buddhists gained ground. So Buddhists started overrunning Sanatanis. So there was one Chandradeva, a Brahmana, who was encouraged by this king Abhimanyu. He performed penance, he performed tapas. He had a darshan of that Naga chief, Nila. That is how Nila Mata Purana came into being. That Nila taught all the rituals, all the Vedic rituals to this Chandradeva. And he re-established all the Vedic rituals. Then Gonanda the III, he was a very virtuous king. He re-established in full all the Vedic rituals. Gonandan Vayanam Adhyaha Saraghunam Raghuryatha. That is the example he gives. For Raghuvamsha, just as Raghu was the Adarsha king, similarly Gonanda was the Adarsha king for this lineage. Then Ravana, there was a king called Ravana. He established a Shiva Linga called Vateshwara Linga. Then we have Nara, also known as Kinnara. He committed a misdemeanor with a Naga woman. And the Nagas, who are the forerunners of Hindu, Brahmanas, etc., became so angry they destroyed the city and the king also perished. Then finally, when this warfare happened, when the Naga warfare with the Hindus happened, beautifully he is describing a shloka. I cannot pass this shloka. Madhu Kaidabhayor Medaha Pragurvorva Chakrinam Dagdhanam Praninam Tattat Tada Sarvangam Asprishat. That means there was an image of Vishnu in a temple, and because of the warfare, the fat, the blood reached the entire body of Vishnu image. Whereas during Madhu Kaitaba war, when Vishnu killed Madhu and Kaitaba on his thigh, the fat of Madhu and Kaitaba reached only up to his thigh, but this time it reached his entire body. That is the example he gives from Puranas. Then this was followed by King Sushravas. Sushravas was a Naga king. He made amends for all the warfare, etc. And how did he make amends? He established a beautiful lake, which is known as Sheshanag Lake today, on the way to Amarnath. Dugdhabdhi Davalam Tene Sarau Duragiro Kritam Amareshwara Yatrayam Janehi Adyapi Drishyate. Now finally he concludes with a moral, the story, because it started with the misdemeanor with a Naga woman, isn't it? He says, Sati Daivata Vipranam Apyekasya Prakopataha Shrutohi Prativrittantam Trailokasyapi Viplavaha. If you misbehave with a Pativrata woman, if you misbehave with a God's image, Daivata, if you misbehave with a Brahmana, with a Vipra, api ekasya prakopataha, even if one of them becomes angry, Shrutohi Prativrittantam Trailokasyapi Viplavaha, all the three worlds will become miserable because of the prakopa of that individual. That's what we have found. That is the lesson he draws. Now, there is one King Siddha who followed him. He also went to Shivaloka with his own body. Aururoha sadehoso lokan shashi shikhamanehe. For Shiva, look at the words he is using, several words. Shashi shikhamanehe. Then he was followed by King Mihirakula, a very violent king. He starts like that. Very violent king. He killed even women. Very surprisingly, he conducted a chastity test for women. You know what he did? There was one canal called Chandrakulya, and that was obstructed for some reason, some stones. So he said, these stones have to be removed. And he said, I have seen a dream in which only a chaste woman can remove that stone. So he asked all the women, nobody could remove the stone. He killed all the women. Look at that. He killed all the women on the basis of the chastity test. This is recorded by Kalhana. But as a penance, finally he realized his mistake. As a penance, you know what he did? He entered fire on a platform studded with swords. Studded with swords on a fire, that kind of platform. And there was Akashvani that he paid for his sins and he has been liberated. Now we go to Gopaditya. Gopaditya, next slide. Now, Gopaditya is described as the golden age, his reign. Jeshteshwaram pratishtapye Gopadra varya deshajaha Gopagrahan kritanayena svikarita dvijaha. He established the Jeshtarudra temple, what is known as Shankaracharya Hill today in Srinagar. That was established. That is still known as Gopadri, even today. Gopadri Hill. He established that. He stopped animal slaughter, except for yajnas. Except for yajnas, he stopped animal slaughter. And he did a lot of good things. Then he was followed by Yudhishthira the first. Now he's making a beautiful remark about Yudhishthira. He says, a king should be a good king, no doubt. It does not mean that he should be like a yogi. King cannot be a yogi. He says that. Sarvatra samadrishtitvam gunoyam khalu yoginaha akirti hetusamahan doshastu prithvipatehe. Samadrishtitvam, samadarshana, having equanimity, is a virtue for a yogi, but not for a king. Because a king should know how to distinguish between good and evil. Because he didn't do that, he was killed. He met with his end. Then we go to Taranga 2. Taranga 1 is a very long one, very detailed history is recorded. We have rushed through it. Taranga 2, the first king, important king is Tunjina. Now he praises Tunjina and his queen. Dampatibhyam yamam tabhyam abhushyata vasundhara Ganga mriganka khandabhyam jatabhuriva dhurjatehe. Dhurjata is Shiva, as you know. Shiva is having Ganga and Chandra. So he says this king and the queen were like Ganga and Chandra. And there was a poet called Chandaka who was Vyasa's Amsha, who adorned his assembly. There was a severe famine suddenly in the kingdom. And the king was so desperately feeling miserable that he wanted to commit suicide. Because people are suffering. I am not able to do anything. Then his queen, she handled the famine. She said, if I let you go, the situation will be still worse. So I will handle it along with your help. And then she handled it successfully. This is nicely recorded by Kalhana. Then there was a king called Sandhiman. Sandhimati or Sandhiman. Very difficult to believe story. It is recorded by Kalhana. You know what happened? This Sandhiman had a lot of enemies. So before he became king, he was impaled. He was killed. He was put upon a pale. Once you are impaled, there is no question of your coming back to life. He became a skeleton. But his Shiva Bhakti was so great, yoginis came in the night and they gave life to that skeleton. Yoginis came in the night. This is seen by eyewitnesses and recorded by Kalhana. Yoginis came in the night to the Smashana. They gave life to the skeleton. They brought limbs by their own power and they created a new Sandhiman. That is how Sandhiman was created. That is why he is known as Sandhiman, because from skeleton he became a human being. Sandhi was created. But he became an extraordinary Shiva Bhakta king. Extraordinary Shiva Bhakta king. Tapasair bhasmarudraksha jata jotankitair bhabhav tasya maheshwari parsha bhumi patestabha. His assembly was looking like a Kailasa, like Shiva's assembly. Tapasaihi bhasmarudraksha. Everybody was a tapasvi. Everybody was having bhasma and rudraksha. Everybody was having jata. Akarostha mahaharmyehi mahalingaihi mahavrishaihi mahatrishulaihi mahati mahamaheshwaro mahim. Everything is maha. Because Maheshwara, no? So everything is Maha. He brought Mahalingas. He brought Mahaharmyas, mean great temples. Mahavrishaihi, even Nandi, big Nandis. Mahatrishulaihi, all this he did. He was such a Shiva Bhakta. Swayam bhumishya tirthaishya potam bhakti visheshataha sayeva bhoktamagyasit pragyaha Kashmira Mandalam. Entire Kashmira Mandala became Shiva Mandala. Swayam bhuvishya tirthaishya. Then we go to Taranga 3. Taranga 3, we start with King Meghavahana. There is a very interesting story about the king. You know what he did? He offered his own body as a sacrifice to Devi Chandi in order to save a boy. Otherwise, the boy was to be offered to Devi Chandi. He said, no, I will offer my body. And he was, of course, protected by Chandi. Chandi appeared in the night and he was protected. This is a real story recorded by Kalhana. Then Varuna appeared and protected him. And Varuna gave him a boon. That boon he used later on when he crossed the sea. You know, like Krishna was carried by his father and Yamuna gave way. Similarly, when he went on an expedition, the Samudra gave way because of Varuna's boon. Samudra gave way, parting of waters. Then, on another occasion, the same king offered his body to Durga Devi, because Durga was being given animal slaughter. He wanted to stop that animal slaughter. Same thing happened. Again, Durga protected him. Now, after that, there was a king called Matrugupta, very interesting king. Very interesting king. Kashmir became kingless, headless. Then, you all know King Vikramaditya of Ujjain, very famous king. So the matter reached Vikramaditya. He deputed a king called Matrugupta. Matrugupta was an ordinary person. He was no claimant for kingship. He was no claimant at all. Suddenly, one fine morning, Vikramaditya chose him and sent him to Kashmir without even telling him that he is the new king. He sent a written message through him and without asking him to read what that message is. He went like a messenger, ordinary messenger. Then when he went there, the message was open. He was anointed as the king. And that Matrugupta was a gem. Mithyakhyata gudonapto namatyaha kalahapriyaha asatya sandastheyo va nasthanesta bahipatehe. There was no confidant the reputation of whose merit is misleading. No minister who delights in squabbles. That was the beauty of his kingdom. No member of council who does not fulfill his obligations at the court of the king. I mean, that is how he goes on. He stopped animal slaughter. He conducted many yajnas. He encouraged poetry in Sanskrit. He made the court poet Menta write Hayagriva Vadham. He also built a temple for Vishnu, Matrugupta Swami. When Matrugupta was appointed king, as usual, Kalhana breaks into a beautiful shloka. Now, I will not go I will not read the shloka for want of time. I'll just read the English translation. It says, looking for comfort and for relief from fear of Garuda, Shesha became bed for Vishnu. Shesha became bed for Vishnu because of fear of Garuda. Now, as he was able to bear hardships, Vishnu placed on him the unending and fatiguing burden of earth. Because he was able to bear hardship, Vishnu decided he should also bear the burden of earth. That is how he is holding the earth. That is how he says. That is how Matrugupta, though he was an ordinary person, he was found capable by King Vikramaditya and he was appointed king. Now, after that we are going to King Pravarasena, another great king who followed Matrugupta. Now, when he was constructing a temple, he was directed by Shiva to go to the village Sharitaka. Now, all of you might have heard of Sharika Parvata, Sharika Devi, very famous Shaktipeta in Kashmir today. Now, that's the same place. Now, also known as Hara Parvata. Now, he had darshan of Devi Sharika and Devi and Yaksha there, and he built the temple after that. He built a bridge across Vitasta. Vitasta is coming again for mention now. He built a bridge across Vitasta. On the left bank of Vitasta, he constructed a city called Pravarapura. 36 lakhs of houses, very rich and prosperous city he constructed. He brought ice water of Vitasta to houses. Ice water of Vitasta was brought to houses. And he was seen going to Kailasa with his own body, like many other kings. Aneneva sharirene bheje bhutapate sabham. Then he was followed by a king called Ranaditya. The interesting thing about Ranaditya was his queen was Devi herself. Vindhyavasini Devi, Brahmaravasini Devi was his queen. Ranadityasya Gaunanda Vamshe Ramasya Raghave Lokantara Sukhasyapi Yoyo Amshabhujav Prajaha. Just as Rama was the jewel in Raghuvamsha, Ranaditya was the jewel in the Gaunanda Vamsha. That is how he says. Then we go to Taranga 4. It starts with Chandra Pida. Now, Pida means an ornament which you wear on the top of the crown, like a garland, you know. All these kings are known as Pidas, that is why. Chandra Pida, he is also known as Vajraditya. Now, he had excellent record as a king. When he wanted land for constructing a temple, the land belonged to a shoemaker. And he sent his emissaries. The shoemaker refused to part with the land. He personally went to the shoemaker's house. Now, shoemaker finally gave the land, and you know, this is the shloka uttered by the shoemaker. Shavigrahena dharmena pandusono puroyatha dharmikatvam tatha tedye maya sprishyena vikshitam. Maya asprishyena vikshitam. I am asprishya. I am untouchable. I am untouchable. I am asprishya. I have seen now what a king can do. You are nobody other than Dharma. Because in the case of Dharmaraja, Yama tested Dharmaraja. He came in the form of a dog, Swargarohana Parva in Mahabharata. You might be familiar. So similarly, you have been tested now by me. That is what he says. Shavigrahena dharmena, in the form of a dog. He is quoting that. See how he is quoting from Purana's Kalhana. Then we go to King Tarapida, the next king. Now, Tarapida's life was cut short, for which Kalhana blames Brahma. Beautiful shloka he says. He says, you are sitting on lotus, and lotus has no life. Very frigid lotus. So you have also become like the lotus, frigid. You don't know what you are doing, whether you are doing right or wrong. He is blaming Brahma for cutting short the king's life. Yoyam parapakaranaya srijatyupayam tenaiva tasya niyamena bhaved vinashaha dhumam prasauti layanandhyakaram yamagnihi bhutvam budas shamaye salilayis tameva. Beautiful description of nature. He says, this King Tarapida had killed his brother, King Chandrapida, using sorcery. Similarly, when he troubled Brahmanas, the same Brahmanas killed this king also using the same sorcery. So he says, what you do to somebody else comes back to you. And for that he is giving an example. He says, fire gives birth to smoke, which blinds the eye. After becoming a cloud, the same smoke extinguishes the very fire by torrents of water. Fire creates smoke, smoke becomes cloud, it becomes water, and it extinguishes this fire. Beautiful example he gives. Now we go to next king, Lalitaditya Mukta Pida, a very famous king. All of you might have heard the name of Lalitaditya. Kashmir means one of the few kings associated with Kashmir is Lalitaditya. Na tatpuram na sagramo na sa sindhur na sornavaha na sadviposti yatraso pratistham vinirmame. All negatives. He says there was no city, there was no village, no river, no samudra, no island where this king did not establish a sacred structure. That is the tribute Kalhana gives him. He encouraged poets in his kingdom. He had great poets in his assembly, Vakpati, Rajashri, Bhavabhuti, etc. His reign extended right up to Karnataka in the south. He established many cities, names are given. And the most important thing, he established Martanda temple, the famous sun temple, which is now lying in ruins. Lalitaditya was the creator of Martanda temple. He constructed a beautiful compound wall for the Martanda temple. One of the beautiful things about this king, he had done charity when he was a very young boy, young prince, he had done charity. Now that charity was noted by Devendra for giving recompense to him in 100 ways. So what happened was, this is recorded by Kalhana, as a historical, it's not a hearsay or myth, it is a history. Now, after he became king, this Lalitaditya, he went somewhere where cherries are not available. No cherry can be found in that place. He says, bring me cherries. I don't know why he said, but somehow he said, bring me cherries. Next moment, a basket of cherries came. Then he realized this is a place where the cherry cannot be found. He asked him, who are you? How did you bring cherries? He said, I am a messenger of Devendra. I am a messenger of Devendra. These cherries are coming from Devaloka. Because you have done that charity last time, 100 times I have to do this. So if you ask for cherries again and again, you will lose all the 100 times. So don't ask for cherries, ask for something more important. That's what he said, that Devaduta. That is the beauty. He says, Patre prasanna chittasya kale danena tenate akhanditanam ajnanam shatamasi trivishtape shatam ajnanam. 100 such obligations are there for me to fulfill. Because you have done kale danena tenate. Any dana which is given in the right time, to the right person, in the right place, that is what he had done. Now, this Lalitaditya, he was taken to a desert treacherously by an enemy, and then he had a big army and there was no water. What to do? Now he came to know that he has been taken there treacherously. Then that is Lalitaditya's greatness, his power of punya. He struck the ground with his kunta, with his spear, and then out came VITASTA water. Like VITASTA, water came from the ground. And he is saying that. Ityuktva sombu nushkrashtum kunte norvim yadarayate ujjigirshuhu vitastambaha shuleneva trilochanaha. When Shiva struck the ground, Vitasta came. Similarly, when this king struck the ground, like Vitasta, water came, he says. Shuleneva trilochanaha. He was followed by another king called Kuvalaya Pida. He was a Raja Rishi. Right at the beginning he said, he was a Raja Rishi. He achieved self-realization. He joined Shivaloka. Then we have Jayapida. It's a very interesting story. Jayapada built temples for Shiva and Vishnu. He built a town called Jayapura. He re-established the practice of studying Mahabharata, Patanjali's Mahabharata. Now comes the interesting story. He somehow, like Kalhana has recorded in the case of some of the previous kings, he is going to record in future also. He developed somehow some enmity with Brahmanas, and Brahmanas became his enemies. And he became a cruel king. Very unfortunate. He became a cruel king. He started torturing Brahmanas. Once a group of Brahmanas came from a place called Tulamulya, now known as Tulamula. Tulamulya, that is the original Sanskrit name. Now, because they came for protesting, because he was torturing the Brahmanas, they came for protesting. So they came and told the king, what do you think of yourself? We are all like rishis in olden days. Like rishis, we can also curse you. Then the king started laughing. Oh, you will curse me. There was exchange of angry and insulting words. Vihasyovachatam raja vishwamitradi kopataha harishchandradiyo nashtaha tvayi kruddhetu kim bhavet. When Vishwamitra became angry, Harishchandra was put to severe torture. When you become angry, what is going to happen to me? You are not Vishwamitra, nor am I Harishchandra. Tvayi kruddhetu kim bhavet. Immediately that Brahmana said, he became very angry. He was shining with tejas. He said, Mayi kruddhe kshanadeva brahmadanda patenna kim. What do you think? If I become angry, Brahmadanda will fall on you in 1 second. Oh, is it so? Let it fall. Patatu brahmadandosa kimadhyapi vilambate. Why are you delaying? Kimadhyapi vilambate. Why are you delaying? Let the Brahmadanda fall, the king said. Immediately the Brahmadanda fell. What is Brahmadanda in this case? Nanvayam patito jalme tatha viprena bhashite. Let it fall, he said. Immediately. Rajnya kanakadandonge vitanas khalito patat. From the vitana, from the canopy, there was the golden bar, kanakadanda, which came and fell down on the king, and the king died within a few days. This is recorded. Very beautiful story. Then we go to Taranga 5. 4:30, yeah? 10 minutes later. Okay. Avantivarma, a great name. Avantivarma, a great name. Like we saw Lalita Aditya, he established Avantipura, Avantishwara, Avantiswami. Great scholars adorned his assembly. His ministers are also praised by Kalhana. This Avantivarma had a siddha called Suya. He was like a civil engineer. No civil engineering had been done in Kashmir for a very long time, so the place was very bad in terms of agriculture. So this Suya, he established canal system, waterworks, etc., re-established. He did a very nice job. For that, Kalhana is all praise for him. He says, he is comparing him with Vishnu. He says, Vishnu took 4 avatars for 4 purposes, whereas Suya did all the 4 in 1 avatara. What are the 4? The reclamation of the land from water. That is what Varaha avatara did. This Suya did now. The bestowal of it to pious Brahmanas, having reclaimed the land, you give it to good people. That Parashurama did. Then building of barrages with stones in water, Rama did across the sea. And the suppression of Kaliya, Krishna, Kaliya Mardana. So that also he did. So he says all the 4 were did by Suya in 1 birth. He was followed by a king called Shankara Varma. He built Shankara Gaurisha temple. His wife built Sugandhesha temple. She was Sugandha. These are famous temples, Shankara Gaurisha and Sugandhesha temples. Ruins are still available today. Then we go to Taranga 6. There is a very good shloka in praise of Aparna, Parvati. Normally every Taranga starts with Ardhanarishwara shloka, but here it starts with shloka for in praise of Aparna as Parvati. Now Aparna was Parvati when she was doing penance to get Shiva. And she had stopped taking even leaves as food. That is why she was known as Aparna. We all know it from Shiva Purana. Now he says here, now what is so great about not taking leaves? Now serpent is not taking anything. Serpent is living on air. And the bull, Nandi, which is also taking only leaves. Now both Nandi and serpent are not part of Shiva. They are outside Shiva's room. Whereas Aparna became part of Shiva. So Aparna's, it's not just not taking leaves that is important. Her devotion, her bhakti is important. That is how Devas are praising her. So Aparna became very happy. That's how he, the poetic imagination, poetic fancy. Then we have King Yashaskara. His rule was so good that agriculturists never had to seek king's intervention. Each of his core team of administrators, ministers, judges, clerks were all learned scholars. He had a very ingenious way of resolving disputes. One beautiful illustration has been given by Kalhana. He says, one of the citizens was leaving his town. Before he left the town, he sold his property, he sold his house. Now, when he sold his house, in the sale deed, he wrote, Sopana Kopa Rahitam Griham Vikritam. That means the house has been sold without Sopana and without Kupa. That is, without staircase and without well. That's what he wrote. Now, and he made his wife to take charge of the Sopana and the Griha. He went out. After a few months, he came. He found his wife did not have either Sopana or Griha, no means of livelihood. She had turned into a beggar. Then he went and questioned the purchaser. He said, no, you have not left any Sopana or Kupa. They are all mine. This is the sale deed. And this issue went to the courts. And even at that time, courts were at several levels. At all the levels, this appeal was dismissed. Then finally it went to the king, King Yashaskara. You know what he did? Somehow he found the truth. Somehow, I don't know how. He found the truth. You know what the truth was? Sopana Kopa Rahitam Griham Vikritam. That was what was written in the sale deed. That Rahitam became Sahitam, Ra became Sa. But the court clerk who registered the sale deed, he became Ra into Sa. Kopana Rupa Sahitam Griham Vikritam. So I got the Sopana and Griha. What is wrong with that? Then this he found, he imprisoned him, he restored the property to him. A very interesting story. Ingenious way of resolving disputes. I wish such ingenious ways are adopted even today. Taranga 7. King Anantadeva was a good king. He gave many gifts to poor people, Brahmanas. Beautiful shloka, he says, even he fell on evil times. Every king falls on evil times in course of time. Many kings. Indriya Indrachandradya Hrepita Ye Sura Api Aparimlana Manatam Te Martyas Yathatava Katham. Even Indra and Chandra are subject to Indriya sensations, emotions. So what about ordinary mortals, he says. Now next is the VITASTA river. Some of the views are shown there in the slide. About VITASTA, he says in passing, Kalhana says in passing, very beautiful shloka about VITASTA. VITASTA comes for mention very frequently, but this is a very rare mention here. He says, Vaitastena tu toyena jatharasthena ye mritaha moksham gachanti asandeham te yatha brahmavadinaha. Those who die with Vitasta water in their stomach, without doubt, they will attain to moksha, like Brahmavadis do, like Jnanis of Brahman do. This is what he says. So great is Vitasta. Then there was a king called Harsha. Harsha is a very famous king, very familiar to King Kalhana, because it was poet Kalhana. Because in poet Kalhana's father, Champaka, was a minister in Harsha's cabinet. But Harsha was full of contradictions. He was charitable and he was plundering. He was very munificent. At the same time, he used to kill people, but he was a great poet. He says, very difficult to understand this king. This shloka is a truism about life. Many truisms given out by. He says, boldness, presence of mind, dash, skill, strategy, freedom from confusion do not desert the minds of men of mighty intellect who are endowed with resoluteness in critical situations. This kind of morals, many morals are being given by Kalhana in many places. Then we go to Taranga 8. King Uchala, then followed by King Sushala. He says something about the impermanence of human life, etc. Then he says, there was one bhikshu, a chieftain, an army chief, who fought the wars. Now this bhikshu, how he fought the war? This is an example. Now the example is because the Shastra. Tata pravrityabhut gopta purav paschatya sarvada vishve deva iva shraddhe yuddhe bhikshur mahabhataha. That is, from this time onwards, the mighty warrior bhikshu became the protector in battle, in front as well as in rear, at all times. Like Vishve Devas at the Shraddha. The example, look at the example. Now, we all invoke Vishve Devas in Shraddha. Apart from Pitrus, there is a person who is invoked as Vishve Devas. Why Vishve Devas are invoked? To protect the Shraddha. That is what he says. Like Vishve Devas protect Shraddha, this bhikshu was protecting the army in all sides. Now, Vitasta, because of the fight, instead of water, it became a river of fire, he says. River of fire. Aurvoshma Vedana Klesham Viveda Saritam Prabhoho. Then comes King Jayasimha. River Paroshni is also mentioned, as we found earlier. Vitasta is a river which is mentioned right from Rigveda. Rigveda, Yajurveda, Agamarshana Sukta, they all mention Vitasta. Their river Paroshni is also mentioned, now known as Ravi. That is mentioned here. Then here he is also mentioning Sharada Devi once again. Paredyuhu Sharadam Drishtva Samprapto Garganandalaha Sankrandana Puri Paura Yodhair Vriddhim Hatair Vyadhat. That is, many people from Gauda Desha, from Bengal, came to Kashmir at that time, and they had a pretense, they had an excuse that they want to have a darshan of Sharada Devi. Under that excuse, they were coming to Kashmir, he says. Taranga 8 has got a lot of life's morals. We will not go into them because we have no time now. About King Jayasimha in Taranga 8, he says, Vitasta Puline Banalinge Tena Niveshite Jayate Surdhuni Rodaha Sampravrudha Avimuktadhihi. On the banks of Vitasta, he established a Banalinga. Banalinga means brought from Narmada. That is why it is called Banalinga. And he gives an example. This brings to mind the Avimukta sanctuary towering high on the bank of the Ganga. That is Vishwanatha. Avimukta is Vishwanatha. Just as Vishwanatha is adorning on the banks of Ganga, the city of Kashi, this Banalinga is adorning the banks of Vitasta river in Kashmir, he says. He concludes Taranga 8 with a beautiful shloka. He says, now I have concluded 8 Tarangas. This is like Godavari with its 7 tributaries. Now, Godavari is not the Godavari we are familiar with. There was another Godavari in Kashmir. Now, he is referring to that. This is mentioned in Nilamata Purana also. Godavari Saridivottumulais Sarangaihi Vakrais Putam Sabati Saptabir Apatanti Shrikantaraja Vipulabi Janabdi Madhyam Vishrantaye Vishati RajaTarangini. The impetuous Godavari in Kashmir, with 7 mouths, like 7 tarangas now, falls into the broad expanse of the ocean for final repose. Similarly, this river of kings, this RajaTarangini, gathered to rest after the swift progress of 7 resonant waves, 7 tarangas, in the amplitude of the bosom of the illustrious Kantiraja's dynasty. Because Kantiraja was the king when he is closing the story in 1138 AD. Now, after this, we have the other RajaTaranginis, where also some kings have maintained the cultural, religious traditions of Kashmir, glorious traditions. In fact, one king, his name was Simhadeva. He established a temple of Nrisimha in Simhalagna, and his guru was Simha, all Simha. So beautifully he is describing that. Then finally he is describing the Muslim kings. He is describing the destruction of temples, conversion of people, forcible conversion of people by Muslims. All that is being described by the subsequent RajaTaranginis. One Butshi Khan, idol breaker, Sultan Sikandar, how he ruined, destroyed all the temples, including the present Martanda temple, Avanti Varma temple, and so on, Avantishwara temple, and so on. So that, all that is described by the rest of the RajaTaranginis. I have taken perhaps a little more time than what was allotted to me, and I take this opportunity to once again extend my sincere thanks to the organizers for given me this opportunity. This book which I have written, where I have concentrated only on the cultural aspects, is being published by Kanchi Shankaramatham. Hopefully it will come soon. Then you can go through in greater detail, give you an opportunity to go through all this in greater detail. I seek your indulgence for having delivered this speech sitting, because I am just recovering from a serious sickness. Otherwise I would have done standing. I thank once again everyone for the patient hearing. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Kalhana's masterpiece, RajaTarangini, seems to be a very unique blend of authentic, chronicle and imaginative poetry, inspired by the poet's passionate love for his very exquisite and beautiful homeland. So, in such a very short time, through your portrayal of RajaTarangini, you brought in front of us the magnificence of Kashmir and its history. Thank you so much, sir. We offer our pranams to you. So, session 1 and 2 today saw tremendous outpour of abundant knowledge, talk after talk after talk. While it is going to be difficult to assimilate all of it in one day, let's try and digest whatever we can and come back to take in some more at sessions 3 and 4 that will happen tomorrow morning. Session 3 will commence at 9:30 a.m. tomorrow with Professor Beena Butki's talk on the culture of Kashmir, followed by Dr. J. Jagannathan's talk on Adi Shankaracharya from Kaladi to Kashmir. At 11 a.m., we will have Sri T.K.V. Rajan talk on why we should safeguard the Kashmir Valley. Session 3 ends with Sri Megh Kalyansundaram's talk on Bharata and Kashmira. After lunch, we'll continue with session 4, which will have Srimati Kala Nagaswamy talk on Kashmir through the eyes of Dr. R. Nagaswamy. Session 4 will conclude with the summing up of the sessions by Dr. Radha Bhaskar, Dr. Rajshri Vasudevan, and will be observed by Dr. Gayatri Kannan, Dr. Vijay Madhavan, and Dr. Sujata Mohan. This evening's program will have a Santur performance by the very eminent Sri Abhay Sopodi and team, followed by Villupattu, our storytelling folk art form, on VITASTA Nadioram Kashmir Kalacharam by Srimati Bharati Tirumagan, who succeeds her legendary father, Sri Subbu Arumagam. And this evening's program will conclude with a lovely Bhan Pathir performance. So looking forward to seeing you all there. Thank you. Dhanyavada.
The last session yesterday was on Kalhana's RajaTarangini by the very learned scholar, Sri P.R. Kannan. Of course, all of us were like, sitting with rapt attention because of the fact that he was just, I would say, pouring or showering or whatever you may say, information after information about the monumental contribution of all the kings who were adorned Kashmir, their monumental contribution to society. And of course, this particular work has got 7,000 verses in 8 tarangas. And he also made a mention about Parvati, how she comes in the form of the VITASTA river. And the contribution of the entire line of kings was beautifully portrayed by him. And it was done in a very, very beautiful and methodical manner where we could assimilate it, because it's a very, very deep subject, but tarangam by tarangam he actually handled. And in each tarangam, what are the kings that are mentioned? What is the contribution? What is the relationship with their society, with the people? Everything was beautifully brought out by him.